You see, there is a normal perception that people have, which is that when times get tough, education becomes a luxury. It was something that I wanted to challenge, and here's how I did it. On the 3rd of September, 2025, Punjab was hit with the worst floods it had seen in living memory. 3 lakh people affected, 30,000 critically or endangered, and over thousands of homes dissipated. It was the worst thing the people of Punjab had seen in decades. Yes, we acted fast. I joined my father's charity in order to provide basic aid at first. We provided mattresses, we provided food, we provided shelter, but it was all so temporary. Picture this. I was in a small town in Punjab called Azilka, in a flood receded area. Homes receding in water, no sign of life. We were on a boat, and I still remember it so well. My father, I, and 6 volunteers passed a public school. The school's name, Gandhi Shiksha Bhavan. Not a life there. No individual was there. Classrooms receded, books drenched in water. And I remember, I thought at that given moment, what happened to the school? The people there, the teachers there, the students who were meant to come here in the morning for their math class but couldn't. No one else in that boat did. And that shook me. I realized we were looking at all forms of aid except the one that's most integral, the one that's most sustainable, education. I remember that night. I went to my father and I asked him a simple question. What do we do? We can provide temporary aid, but in the long run, these people will face issues that we can't think of. Picture this. Do you know the consequences that education provides? First and foremost, it's hard to get jobs. It reduces your opportunity to find jobs. Additionally, the confidence of these educators, the confidence of these students, their livelihoods, all gone because of the flood. So I asked him, Dad, what do you think I should do? And he told me, do what you think is right, beta. Be the change you want to see in society. I remember that night, I called up tutors of mine, the ones that were teaching me at school, the ones that were teaching me my personal tuitions. And I asked them, sir, would you be willing to fly down to Punjab to help me? That night, we flew down 15 different educators from Bombay all the way to Punjab in a small town called Azilka. We spent the next 2 nights tirelessly creating bridging curricula. We weren't intending on replacing these schools. We could never. We were intending on being the bridge between these children that lacked education and them getting back into formal education. That gave birth to Project Disha. Project Disha is my education continuity initiative that aims at restoring sustainability, education, and dignity for crisis-affected individuals. It started off small. We began by getting small students in nearby villages home. At first, we thought the number would be small, say 5, 10. I mean, that's what any 16-year-old at that time would assume, right? 90 students. 90 students were impacted in a small village in Punjab. We began running educational outreach camps, and I am beyond proud to say that so far we have held 11 educational outreach camps impacting 90 students per camp. Do the math, that is 990 children being impacted. You know, in moments like these, I often think that it is very important to retrospect on things. Let me take you all back to a moment in COVID-19 pandemic. I was 14 years old. And I remember, like any kid would, I was balancing pursuits in life, interests, what I thought was interesting. And I would see the news every now and then. I would look at the news, retrospect, school closures, the lockdown, migrants stranded. Think about it for a bit and close the tab. That's the version I'm least proud of. The person sitting next to me, my father, decided he had to act. And today, as a proud son, I can say, because of him, 15,000 people have gone back home through airlifts or people being stranded in different isolated countries. He decided to act. And I knew it was my time to do so too. That brings us to the second point. You see, Disha had 990 students across our 11 educational outreach camps with about 90 in each camp, but attendance was dropping drastically. First week, we had about 90 students. The second, 70. By the fourth week, we only had 20 students. I went back to the drawing board. I thought, what was wrong? Did these people not care about education? Certainly not. That wasn't the reason. It's simple though. Because they lacked the sustainability, the stability behind them, how could they come to our outreach camps? I mean, it's like I'm asking a person to focus on fractions when they do not know where they'll sleep that night. And I realized we had to do something about it. So, Project Disha joined hands with Sood Charity Foundation, and so far we have built 237 homes for crisis-affected individuals across Punjab in 11 different cities. Yes, as we speak, homes are being rebuilt in Punjab and life is being restored to stability. 237 so far and many more to go. You see, when we brought back stability and we reassured these students that we will provide you a safe home, please come back. We didn't have to ask them. The students themselves came back. Not because of any asking, but because they wanted to and they could. Attendance began. We increased from 90 to 110 students and we were back flowing at full occupancy rates, far greater than we could imagine, by the way. I was over the moon. But you know, there's a very famous Bollywood saying, which is, "Picture abhi baki hai mere dost." The story wasn't over yet. I remember sitting at one of these educational outreach camps, I saw a student in the corner. His name, Arjun Singh Sampath. He was a little boy, must be about 8 or 9, and he was struggling for reasons you wouldn't imagine. I remember I went and I sat next to him, trying to observe what was going on. By the time the camp ended, I went to him and I asked him, "How are you managing?" For retrospect, that kid lacked his right arm. Yes, he didn't have his right limb, yet he was trying. And you know what's the craziest part about this all? It was the fact that he had managed to find a way to maneuver this. He used to use his left elbow, tuck it towards the paper tight, and slowly trace at the pace of a 4-year-old. Because he had to. He wanted to. He had determination far greater than anyone like I would, because he had a circumstance he was never meant to have. Yet, he kept trying. I realized that there were systems out there that weren't meant for these people. I still remember the words that I had with him. I asked him, "How do you manage?" And he said in Hindi, "Kyunki mere paas koi aur sahara nahi hai," which means he had no other opportunities or no other support. That shook me again. I thought the entire aspect of this crisis was to bring back education, to provide sustainable change. But that wasn't the case. There were people out there that we had put into a system that never belonged. And so I thought, what should we do? Back to the drawing board I went, thinking, how do we help a person like Arjun Sampath? And so, we began working. Now you'd assume these solutions would be very expensive, but they're not. It's as simple as a weighted clipboard, a slightly thicker paper, or a pencil designed for an individual with one arm, and these children can really catch up. So, we implemented it. We got it back to these individuals. We began noticing change. Arjun was doing far better than previously. But then, another reality struck me. Arjun Singh Sampath was a little kid in a town called Azilka in Punjab. How many Arjuns were there? How many people were there that still needed help, that were put in a system that never really belonged to them? That didn't let me sleep that night. And so, we got in contact with the Inali Foundation. The Inali Foundation is led by a brilliant engineer called Mr. Prashant Gade. I spent 2 months of my time with Mr. Prashant Gade as we designed prosthetic arms that were not only commercially viable, but also easily distributable and could be implemented into any size of a limb within 30 minutes. After spending 2 months, while these educational outreach camps re-enrolled all the students, by the way, back into formal schooling, I came up with a permanent solution with a brilliant team. I am beyond proud to say this, but Project Disha, in cooperation with the Inali Foundation so far, has designed and distributed over 200 fully functioning prosthetic arms, rebuilding dignity for each Arjun Sampath that was out there, that was meant to be in a system that never really belonged to them. Now, that brings me to the title of this talk, the title being The Weight of Becoming. Why do we sit here? Well, I certainly don't stand here to glorify the things that Project Disha has done because, quite frankly speaking, there is so much more to do. I stand here because I see an auditorium full of change makers. I see individuals that can really change and impact society for the betterment. The Weight of Becoming, the title, comes from the ethos of understanding what you stand for. There was once a ruler named Ashoka the Great. Many of you must have heard about him. Now, why would you assume he was called Ashoka the Great? People would think because he had a great army, he had thousands of kingdoms or hundreds of people under his name. No, none of that mattered. He was called Ashoka the Great for a completely different reason. You know, Ashoka the Great decided that his last war would be Kalinga, which it was, but for all the reasons you would assume it not being. It was his last war because after the impact of the war, he realized this was never his purpose. This was never what he was sent on earth to do. He spent the rest of his life carving edicts of compassion. He built schools, roads, and he transformed the life of the people that had died for him. He created a system that was for everyone. That is why we call him Ashoka the Great today. He had his Kalinga moment, my father had it during COVID, and I had it during Project Disha. I realized that we had to create a system, we had to be there for people that were never meant to be a part of this. Today, we often look at the news, we think, this is a calamity that exists. What do we do about it? Think about it, retrospect, and close a tab. I have done it, and so many of y'all must have. But the reason I stand here today with my entire heart in front of you is the next time you see the news, don't think about, okay, that's so sad. Think about the aspect of what can we do. Question what's happening to the education of the people out here. Question what happens to a person that doesn't belong in the system. Question what happens to the children of that area. Because, loss is shown as loss economic output, as higher illiteracy rates. India needs to develop as a country that becomes pioneering. We have engineering pioneers, we have the brightest minds, yet we have systems that do not incorporate them fully. So I stand here before you, requesting you to raise the voice. Talk about that news outlet that talks about a school closure. Ask what's happening to the children. Talk about the news outlet that talks about people losing their arms and ask, who is the person? Is our government providing them the aid that's required? Ask. Because most of the time, we are under this conception, what can one individual do? And it's completely valid. It is a human instinct. I mean, when I started, I was a 16-year-old boy with no massive budgets. I too could have thought, what would I do? And most definitely, I could have stopped. But I tried. And today, we've created a little impact. All of y'all over here, I genuinely believe are change makers that hold far greater impact, even more than I do. And I request you guys from the bottom of my heart to keep trying, keep working, keep questioning. Because trust me, if one person asks loudly, a room is recognized. And if a room of people, like this auditorium, asks loudly enough, it changes what gets funded, what gets prioritized, and what the government looks into. So, ending it on a very cheesy line, picture abhi baki hai mere dost. Project Disha isn't over yet. We are still evolving. My story isn't finished, and neither is yours. Go out there and change the world. Thank you so much, guys.